Sten, we're live.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty guy, who needs a little more FaceTime on this show. Let's see. Let's have a public petition to get Larry, the Liberty guy, out here a little bit more. Anyway, Mike Stenhouse, your host. Welcome back to In the Dugout. All right, so I'm going to go with the traditional Harvard Crimson cap today. I'll explain that why when our guest joins us at around the bottom of the hour. And speaking of that, so today on our show, we've got Bob Corradio, who from Westerly, who's going to speak about the creeping, I'm going to call it the creeping of wokeness and the 1619 project potentially into Westerly schools. He wants to tell you some things about what's going on down there in Westerly. Is Tom Brady a racist? Oh, really? Is he a racist? If you look at social media morons, it's a segment we haven't done in a while on the show, but we're going to do that pretty much right near the top of the show, so in just a couple of minutes. But the social media morons out there are pretty much calling Tom Brady a racist. And you won't believe why. These people really are morons. The connection today, President Trump's second impeachment starts. I laugh because it's a complete sham. We'll talk about that and the connection of that incident to what happened here in Rhode Island with Representative Justin Price on the July 6th DC protests and riots, if that's what we call them, and Liz Cheney, one of the national leaders of the Republican U.S. House of Representatives who voted to impeach Trump. They're all tied together, and we'll talk about that. Tomorrow, we're going to have a special guest who will talk about another local victory for the good guys in Portsmouth. We talked about how, we lost, good guys lost the Barrington flag issue, at least for now, in Barrington, but they won this kind of crazy diversity idea in Bristol. And there is a victory in Portsmouth that we'll tell you about tomorrow. And their victory might have saved us all from Big Brother, and you'll hear about that tomorrow. Thursday, our show, we're going to have an up-and-coming star in the Republican Party. She gave the response to the governor's state of the state last week, Senator Jessica De La Cruz from the Burville area. She got a lot of acclaim, I think, for her response. So we'll have her on, review some of the parts of her talk and find out what's next for her. And of course, on Thursdays, Dr. Andrew Boston, who will talk about all things COVID. Apparently, the doctor, who we've helped elevate his voice, was on a local talk show yesterday talking. So that's great. We're glad to hear that his message is getting out there beyond you, our prized audience. All right. One thing just to talk a little bit about COVID is the media, the way they just promote the fear, right? So let me share my screen here. And every Monday you see something like this. Every Monday, the headlines, they just love it in the media when they can take 3 days worth of data and put it into one headline to make it look like things are really, really scary out there and why we all need to do exactly what the government says we must do. So look at this headline. This is from, I think this was Providence Business News. Let me see here if I can see that. Whatever. I think it was. But anyway, COVID cases rise by 1,000, 24 more deaths. They love it when they can put 3 days worth of data into one. Okay, so here's what's really going on. So compare that headline to this chart, which I'll pull up for you right here. This is what's actually happening. Cases are going down rapidly. Okay, we still have cases. We'd like that to get to zero. But if you look at the headline, COVID-19 cases rise by 1,000, when they're actually going down. Yes, the gross number is rising, but you see how deceptive it is. You see the tricks they play to try to keep you scared, just like we're going to talk about with Dr. Boston on Thursday. Now they're trying to scare everybody about the new strains that are coming out of Africa. We heard I don't know what happened to that one in England. What happened to that English strain from a few years ago? I mean, a few months ago. Remember how we were all supposed to be worried about that? Well, I don't know what happened to that. That one's gone. Okay. Social media morons. I mean, people, and by the way, listen, if you're listening, watching, please comment, up until our guest comes at the bottom of the half hour, or bottom of the hour, is how you say it. You're welcome to call in, put a comment on YouTube. We'll try to be as responsive as we can. Larry Liberty Guy will be putting up the numbers for you here shortly. But people are so brave and so foolish when they get behind a keyboard and they can hide behind a social media profile. It's really incredible the things they will type. And you wonder if that's really what they would say to you or me in person, what they might say publicly, or is it just false sense of security and bravado they get when they're behind a keyboard and behind some name on a Twitter account or a Facebook account? But take a look at this. This is, I don't know why my share screen isn't quite working the way I want it to.
Try it now, Sten.
What's that?
Try it now. I was sharing the call-in.
Oh, no. Okay. But here's one. So you're all happy that a Trump supporter won his 7th ring during Black History Month. What? So Tom Brady, apparently did support the president, last campaign, or during the first campaign, I think, more specifically. All right, we got to mute our guests here. So I'm trying to bring up this next image for you. Here we go. Okay, now I got it working properly. I know what I was doing wrong. So are you seeing this on the screen? Okay, here's a bunch of other tweets. I just feel like Tom Brady winning another ring is racist. I feel like rooting for Tom Brady is a racist, rooting for that phrase. There's no world where I'm rooting for Tom Brady to win a Super Bowl during Black History Month. Tom Brady is a low-key racist for winning a Super Bowl during Black History Month. All the most racist people I know love Tom Brady. I mean, really, is there any other word but to describe these people as social media morons? In Black History Month, when a white quarterback goes against a black quarterback, or any athlete or any person in any sport or any line of work or business, if it's Black History Month, you have to lay down and let the, I don't even want to say it, let the other person win. Now, not only is that moronic, completely moronic, but how condescending is that to Patrick Mahomes, the black quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, to any minority? That during a whole month, those with white privilege are just going to lay down for you and let you get what you want. let you get the promotion, let you get the victory, let you win the argument. It reminds me of, I mean, how demeaning is that? Forget the moronic. That's obvious. The critical question is, how demeaning is that to have that attitude? It reminds me of a story. I went, it wasn't too long ago. We had Martin Luther King Day. I'm going to say it was 2 years ago, Martin Luther King Day. I've been maybe 3 or 4 times when I've been invited by one of my African-American friends to go to Martin Luther King breakfast. And 2 years ago, was it 2? Yeah, it was probably right before the last election. Okay, whenever the gubernatorial election. So it would have been January of 2018. That's what it was. And the governor was running for re-election. So there's this big breakfast at Rhodes on the Patuxent. I'm going to guess there's 700 people there. I mean, good sized crowd. Mostly minority by far, but that's okay. And Gina Raimondo walks in. Last minute, it's nothing but a political rally. Every prominent Democrat politician was on the dais up at the VIP raised table. And it was just a parade of one Democrat speaker after another Democrat speaker after they gave out a few awards to some African-American children and whatnot. Gina Raimondo comes in late. Of course, she can't be bothered to sit there for the whole breakfast. Well, they walk her right up to the podium. She announces a free breakfast program at, I don't know if it's K through 12 or kindergarten. I don't know where it was, but she announces some free K through 12 in addition to free lunch, free breakfast in Providence schools, or for those who qualify. And the place goes crazy, and she's all happy, and she finishes her speech and she walks out. Now, I criticize both sides on that. The same thing with this social media moron segment. How arrogant of her to think that she could walk in to a room full of distinguished Black Rhode Islanders, mostly Rhode Islanders, and buy their vote just by throwing a free breakfast at kids. That nothing else should matter. How arrogant and demeaning of her. But how self-deprecating is it from the audience to be bought by something as petty and as, I don't want to say meaningless, kids got to eat, but so obviously political. This is what I don't get about this whole Black Lives Matter, wokeness. To me, it's so demeaning. It's so arrogant and presumptuous on the side of those who are preaching. And I don't know how the people who cheer on this kind of reverse racism, whatever you want to call it, can sit there with a serious face and feel proud about being given a handout for nothing. That's not a meritocracy. That's not America. That's not capitalism. That's pure pandering. And both the panderer and the panderee should be ashamed of themselves. What the hell's going on? I mean, how are people so simple-minded or arrogant to be fooled by this stuff? So when you can call Tom Brady racist for winning a game, we know things are upside down. And there's so much upside down. So demeaning. So how does David Cicilline, one of our two U.S. congressmen, congress people, congress they, I don't know, whatever the word is these days. How does he not feel embarrassed, arrogant, demeaned to get in that little procession carrying those impeachment articles in this big ceremony that the leftist media breathlessly follows, breathlessly promotes, knowing he's going to know that it's a completely sham impeachment and that he's doing nothing political theater, but yet he plays the part seemingly so proudly with so resolute in his determination, such serious charges. And it's a joke. Do people have no shame? I mean, do people have no shame anymore? Do people have no sense of reality anymore? If you look at the Rhode Island Echo this month, I had my column in there. And that's what I write. You know, it just, to us, it seems like they are living in Never Land. It's this make-believe world. Then I finish, like I always finish, or is it we who are living in the make-believe world? I don't know. So David Cicilline took center stage today, one of the impeachment managers. And I guess I'm not going to watch a minute of this joke sham of this. I guess the trial started today of Donald Trump. Now they can say he's the only one to be impeached twice, probably the only one to be impeached ever on such flimsy issues. This all reminds me of like this. What is going on with my computer today? So I'm very sorry. It's taken me long. There we go. It reminds me of this. What does this look like to you? This is the guillotine at the French Revolution, where we have these rushes to judgment. We don't care what the facts say. Don't even care what the science says anymore. And we rush to judgment. We create the narrative. Our supporters, and in this case, the media, again, breathlessly support that narrative. The talking heads, the advocates aligned, all adopt this Neverland narrative. And somehow it takes hold like it's real. We know, and we've known for weeks now, the FBI has admitted it, the New York Times has admitted it, CNN, I've seen the reports on CNN, that the riots on January 6th were pre-planned. They were not incited by Trump on the spur of the moment. I mean, it's the FBI. Everybody knows it now, but yet the impeachment, the farce, Neverland impeachment continues. And it should never have started. Here's from the New York Times. On January 4th, the Intelligence Division of the U.S. Capitol Police issued a report 2 days before, January 4th, issued a report listing all the groups known to be descending on the city. All the groups. Did Trump incite them? Listen, Trump called the people there. Yes. Trump raised expectations that either Mike Pence was going to do something or some massive piece of evidence was going to be presented that day in Congress. And then it didn't happen. That's political rhetoric. I get, but he didn't incite a riot, didn't in any way suggest an insurrection. So, but we knew that groups were, the New York Times, again, descending on the city on a January 4th report. The documents show how the police and federal law enforcement agencies produced inconsistent, sometimes conflicting assessments of the threat from American citizens marching on the Capitol. We also learned today in headlines that Trump offered, I'm not sure if it was to the mayor of DC or to the Capitol Police, to bring in the National Guard for extra security, knowing these reports. They turned them down. But yeah, we continue with this farcical sham that he somehow incited all this. Now, the same thing happened, and a similar thing happened to one of our state representatives, Justin Price, down in South County. He was at the protest, did not participate in the riots portion, and made a comment that some of the perpetrators, the violent perpetrators, were, I don't know if he said BLM or from the left or Antifa, I don't know what he said, but something like that. And immediately, Seth Magaziner, the treasurer, a representative from a state rep from Cranston, I'm blanking out on his name, and many others put shame, because the narrative was set. Trump incited the riots, and Trump and Republicans are dangerous and did all the damage. And they called for Price to resign, and if he wasn't strong, he would have resigned. Now we know that he was probably half right, at least. We know that it was pre-planned. We know that Trump didn't incite it. We know that other groups were involved. They haven't identified those groups to us yet, but a pretty good bet that at least one of them is going to be from the far left. We know that one of them was from the far right. But again, this rush, this French Revolution style rush to judgment. You're either in or you're out. And if you're deemed a deplorable out, watch out. The French Revolution will guillotine for you. Today, canceled. Social media, your job, your position as an elected official, cancel. Rush to judgment. Democracy is supposed to be a deliberate and thoughtful process. Democracy is not to make sure the will of the people, a majority of the people, is being represented. Folks, this is not democracy. I don't even know what you call it. It's gotten to a point that even I didn't imagine years ago. I tell the story, political correctness, that's what we called it 6 years ago. It just used to be a thing you'd talk about. You'd hear this quirky idea on the news, or you'd talk about it at the water cooler at the family dinner table, and it never really got beyond that. But now political correctness is like a wildfire. These crazy, crazy ideas catch fire, get adopted as part of the narrative by politicians, academia, the media, the advocates, and it becomes this fake reality, but reality to many. I said government run by political correctness is a bad government. It's worse than that. We now have a culture run by political correctness, not just our government. It's one thing when government, I never could have imagined that people would be afraid to speak reality. Again, I have no malice towards anyone, but take the transgender issue. I forget the newspaper. It was USA Today. Somebody made the statement that no matter what hormones you give a boy, no matter what surgery you give a boy, and this was in relation to boys competing against girls or transgender girls competing against girls, that you still biologically have a male competing against a female. I think it was USA Today, fact checked it and said that statement is false. I guess magically you can wish your XY chromosomes to change. No, you can't. No, you can't. That's what I'm saying. Do you see how crazy this is getting? That just because the elites say it's so, it's so. No, it's not the way it works. So so we talked about Judge. So take Elizabeth Cheney. Now there's the way it's actually supposed to work. All right. She got caught up in a narrative. That's fine. It's her choice. She's an elected rep. She voted even as a leader in the U.S. Congress, Republican caucus. She voted to impeach Trump. That's fine. That's her choice. And then immediately, the Republican cancel culture wanted her out. No, it's up to the people. Just like it's up to the people in Justin Price's district here in Rhode Island. It's up to the people in where is she from? Montana. Yeah, Montana, to decide if Liz Cheney's actions mean she should be out. So I was glad the Republican caucus didn't boot her out. I'm glad the Republican caucus didn't become its own version of the cancel culture. But I'm also glad that she's paying the price to voters in Montana. And it's perfectly fine that Matt Gaetz and I saw Don Trump Jr. is going out to Montana to campaign against Liz Cheney. That's fine. That's the price you pay. The voters decide. We, the people, decide. The elites don't decide. That's not democracy when the elites, the petulant elites, will go to any extent if they don't originally get their way. Canceling people is childish. It's childish. In addition to being immoral and undemocratic. I mean, just think of the myths that have taken hold as reality in our country. Police systematically hunting African Americans. Republicans as insurrectionists and the dangerous ones. The transgender story. So I criticize now URI, University of Rhode Island, had a story. Let me see if I can bring this up. So here's a guy who was suspended at University of Rhode Island. Never heard of this guy. We got the other guy at URI who said it was okay to murder people, and URI does nothing about him. Now, here's a guy, obviously a liberal, obviously a BLM supporter, who's, as you can see here, is accused the school of Jim Crow racism, and he's been placed on administrative leave. Why? Why him and not the other? Either you're free to say what you want or you're not. In this case, I don't agree with anything this professor says. What's his name here? I can't even see. Luis Fosu, I'm guessing. Deliberate, he says there's been a deliberate and racist demonizing exclusion of highly qualified African American and Blacks, Latinos, Hispanics, and Native Americans from positions of senior leadership and other positions throughout the university. And for that, he was placed on administrative leave. Why can't he say that? I probably think what he said is false, but it's his right to say that. Why can't he say that? At least he didn't call for the murder. That murder of people was okay, like the other professor we talked about last week did. I mean, this urge to just react and cancel people, whether it's from the right or from the left, or whether it's by someone who says something conservative or says something liberal, or says something pro-Trump or says something anti-Trump. It's crazy what's going on out there. Democracy and our culture should be deliberate and thoughtful. We're not seeing that right now. We're not seeing that. So speaking of crazy ideas, let's bring in our guest, Bob Corradio from Westerly, who's really kind of been a one-man band against what he sees some of this craziness potentially about to creep into Westerly public schools. Bob Corradio, welcome to In the Dugout.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, and thanks for this platform to talk about this very important issue.
All right, first things first. I knew you were coming, so I got my Harvard hat on. That's because you have what?
Yes, sir. I have my brown football hat on. We both proudly wear them. Sure.
So you are a Brown. You grew up in Westerly.
Yes, sir. I did.
You went to Brown University.
I did.
You were a former school teacher yourself at Westerly and in Connecticut.
For a very brief time, yes. For about 4 years, yes.
You still live in Westerly?
Yes, we do.
And you've got a lot of private sector experience as well.
Yes, sir. That's true, Mike.
Now, your kids are past high school, right? Did they go to Westerly High School?
They did, yes. And they're high school, graduated high school, graduated college already, and in the work world now.
So while you have some connections there, they're past connections, you as a teacher, your kids as former students, but you just sum it up. You are afraid that some of this 1619 project stuff is about to take root in Westerly. Can you just quickly give us a high level what your concern is right now?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. After June of last year, I became concerned or just curious as to, if some of the theories of BLM and 1619 Project, critical race theory had infiltrated Westerly public schools. So I did some research, addressed the school committee back in October, and did some digging over the last 4 months, and come to find out that there are some things going on in our schools that concern me. In a letter the other day to the Westerly Sun, I illuminated on some of those.
Let's go back first, because I know there was a letter. You said it all started last June, so let's take a look at that letter first from Mark Garceau, the superintendent of schools in Westerly.
Right.
Here's a letter he sent out last June. I've highlighted a few sections, but what about this letter alarmed you?
Well, it insinuates that to me, that systemic racism exists in our schools and in our community here. What
would you say is the minority population in Westerly schools?
Oh gosh, I think it's higher than it was, but it's still pretty low. I'm guessing 10 to 10% maybe.
Okay, all right.
I could be way off, but I think
Providence, 85%, nothing
right
like
on.
that, right? Yeah.
Yes. So this got me a little bit concerned. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research, and did that. And like I said, I addressed the school committee, and I had some questions to which I didn't get adequate answers to my mind. So the last 4 months, I've spent doing some research and talking to people and finding out just exactly what is going on in our schools. And let me preface it by saying that we have tons of great teachers in our school system here. I mean, the vast majority of them are terrific. My concern is
you're claiming that some of them, given the sort of encouragement by this letter, have started to go off the rails towards this 1619 critical race theory kind of stuff, right?
Right, Mike. And this is kind of a permission slip, really, and it emboldened some of those who are on the left to maybe overstep some of their boundaries in terms of being down the middle on issues and imposing their own political beliefs on some of the students that they teach.
All right, tell us about your conversation. So we're as you're talking, we're looking at your letter you wrote, and it's not the as it appeared in the paper, but it's as you typed it. But tell us about your conversation with Assistant Superintendent Alicia Story.
Well, I wanted to know what was going on. If, like I said, if BLM was their tenets of their movement were being taught in our schools, and come to find out that there are certainly some aspects of the three belief systems, BLM, 1619 Project, and critical race theory, that have been incorporated not only into the instruction and resource materials, but into teacher training as well. And that's
Is that the bias training you mentioned here in the letter?
Yes.
All right, tell us about that.
Well, the bias training, to my understanding, is based on the fact that white people are inherently racist, and it's just a to my mind it's kind of poison.
All right, so let's get this straight. You're saying that this training, and we're looking at a letter, and you're saying that these three items, those with white skin, are always advantaged as whites have more opportunities. Race inequality permeates America today and always has, and white people are inherently racist. You're saying that this is in the bias training program that actually is being administered to Westerly teachers.
That is correct. Yes, and those are
already done. It's not being planned. It's in progress now.
To my mind, to my knowledge, there have been 3 such sessions, and those are 3 of the assumptions that are made. Yes, among others.
And the Westerly Public Schools has also put out, what I'll try to bring it up later, an anti-racism policies and practices guideline. So with all this as a backdrop, bias training, this statement on anti-racist policies, which on its own is fine, but we all know what it really means. You list, this website that has about 100 left-leaning citations and support, and nothing on the conservative side. A couple of teachers have since gone out what you think is crossed the line, emboldened by all this stuff, right? What are the 2 examples you'd like to talk about?
Well, the one was the one that you just referenced, was the anti-racism policy and practice that was purported by this teacher or teachers to be that of the district, when it was in fact this teacher's own thoughts, teacher or teachers, purported to be that of the district. So to me, that is certainly misrepresenting this teacher's beliefs as that of belonging to the district.
So here she is. She's put out, it looks like it's an electronic petition to support Westerly Public Schools anti-racism and policies practices. But you're saying this is not the official policy of Westerly Public Schools. It's her sort of projecting herself in that manner.
That is correct. And again, going back to Garceau's letter, the superintendent's letter, that to me emboldened this teacher and others to go ahead and act on their own beliefs and political leanings without fear of anything that would happen to them.
Now, all right, so did anything happen? Was there did the school committee or the superintendent's office tell her to stop, or did anything like that?
I asked back in October. I've asked again in my letter the other day, and I have yet to receive an answer. So I can't tell you yes or no.
All right. And then here's another example where I guess it's the same teacher. Now, I assume this is when she's doing an online class. This is what she's asking the kids to sign in on. And then do you want to use some of these woke pronouns, right? Really encouraging people to think about that, right?
Yeah. Well, again, this could be a one teacher or a group of teachers. And I want to just make this clear, you know, in my letter the other day, it isn't the fact of the pronouns being asked for that really got me. What really got under my skin was this again was purported to be a district-wide initiative, and come to find out it was not. So it was yet another end run by a teacher or teachers. The problem here is there are several, but the one that I really want to stress for a moment anyway is that teachers seem to be, some of them, a small amount of them seem to be doing end runs on their own and acting on their own beliefs.
Without any pushback from anybody.
With appears to be a wink from administration. And, you know, and it's troubling because I want to know who's running things here.
All right. Well, who's the teacher?
Well, I'm waiting for a response from the school committee and others. So I prefer not to name them at present.
Well, isn't it publicly known who she is or he is?
It hasn't been made publicly known yet, except on one Facebook page. So I would rather focus on rather than singling people out, addressing the problem and trying to bring people together to address these issues.
And you think the issue is larger than one teacher? You said earlier a group of teachers. You think this is an attitude that's rapidly infiltrating Westerly school system?
That's what I'm afraid of, Mike. Yes, I'm afraid of that.
So your kids are out of school. You're not teaching there anymore. What's your interest in this?
My interest, I think, is what everybody's interest should be. You know, it's our youth are the most valuable assets that we have. Okay. And we have to protect them. Yes, we want to expose them to all different ways of thinking, but we want them ultimately to be able to make their own decisions based on fact-based information that is provided to them by their teachers or that they seek out. I don't feel it's right for a teacher to impose his or her belief system, politically or otherwise, on someone that we've entrusted to teach our kids. That's the most important thing.
How to think, not what to think.
How to think, not what to think. Exactly.
And to pick up on, I'm going to put words in, you don't have to comment on it, but I'll make this comment based on the theme I put earlier. We're literally, you can comment if you like, I guess, but in my view, we're literally teaching kids how to live in a false world in Never Never Land. They create this narrative. It's not based on reality. It's not based on the fact. But yet we're teaching it to our kids.
We've got to get away from the hate and the identity politics of the 1619 Project and critical race theory and the BLM movement itself, where people are identified by what they look like rather than who they are inside. You know,
why is that gone full circle since Martin Luther King, hasn't it? Wow.
Right on. Absolutely. I mean, he was, of course, the person to whom we all quote all the time in his "I Have a Dream" speech. And all of this stuff is flying in the face of Dr. Martin Luther King's wishes.
So, couple things more. Thank you for your time. So I assume that your concerns, based on what you say, are larger than just what's going on in Westerly. So I assume, A, you want to raise awareness among Westerly parents that we have superintendents and assistant superintendents. Mark Garceau, is it Alicia Story? We have teachers who are really seem like they're getting ready to push this agenda and are very open to it. So we'll come back to Wesley, but I think B, do you have a message for parents in other cities and towns throughout the state?
I do. And that message is several fold. One, you have to stand up for your own kids. You know, the parent or parents that are in the home have to be responsible for their own children. They have to be the biggest advocate for their kids. We can't expect other people to carry the ball for parents. I understand now, going back to my letter for a second, that some of these parents that we referenced in terms of when their kids were getting teachers' personal political opinions pushed on them, these parents didn't want to comment. They were afraid of reprisal by the district. That should not happen. That should not be the
What can a
case.
school district? I got a couple of questions from our YouTube watchers in a second, but what kind of reprisals could they do?
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, you could give the kid a bad grade. You could put things in the student's file. I'm just.
You have any evidence that any of that's happened?
No, I don't. I don't have any evidence.
So in other words, they would cancel the kids of anyone who spoke out is the fear, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it's happened in class already. It's happened at least twice.
What's happened?
That kids have been silenced and kids have been demeaned and singled out because they're conservative thinkers. It's happened. And it's going to continue to happen.
You know that evidentiary or anecdotally?
I know it firsthand. And the parents that I spoke with didn't want to be named, so I won't, out of respect to them, I won't name them. I won't name where it happened, but it happened in the Westerly school system, and it's not right. And it's going to continue happening unless and until parents decide to stand up for their own kids.
So, couple questions here. So, to be clear, the 1619 curriculum has not yet been formally adopted by the Westerly school system. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, no, but certain tenets of it are inherent in the bias training and some course instruction and reference materials. Yes.
All right. So it almost seems like the groundwork's being laid by training, getting the teachers on board. Would that be fair to say?
In my opinion, yes.
And it would be the school committee itself who is it the school committee or the superintendents who decide the curriculum?
I believe the school committee's responsibility, one of their responsibilities is to approve all curriculum. I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that to be true.
All right. Do you know of any teachers who either refused to go to the bias training or have suffered any consequence for speaking out against it?
I do not. Honestly,
so as far as you know, every teacher, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative here, but every teacher, at least with regard to making public comments, has just accepted the training, been a sheeple, and gone along with the flow.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, why not?
But to my
No one
knowledge,
spoke out.
they have. You're correct. I don't know if they have internally or not. I have not heard if they have spoken out, but I do know that there are some that are less than thrilled with having to go through it.
And do you know if this crazy bias training is mandatory or just?
I believe it is, and I believe it may be a statewide initiative. That's something that you could check into. I think it might be
statewide initiative.
It very well may be
By Rhode Island Department of Education.
Yeah, it could very well be, Mike.
Well, I would ask you to look into that yourself there in Westerly. Is it mandatory in Westerly? We can check out at the state level, but I would like to know if this is mandatory or just something they're offering to teachers who are interested. That's a pretty big distinction.
Yeah, it's not a show up if you want type of training.
And they do this during the school day?
I don't know exactly when.
I see. Can you check back? I mean, we'll have you back on the show as things progress, but can you check back on that?
Certainly.
All right. So you gave a message to statewide parents that you need to know what's going on in your school system with your kids' curriculum. Who do you think is being the most, what's the word I want to use? Who's sticking in their heads in the sand the most and letting this happen? Is it the superintendent staff, or is it the school committee, or is it both?
I say that everything starts at the top. Okay, so to me, if this stuff is going on, the buck, as I said in my letter, stops at the superintendent's desk. That's Garceau's.
To you?
That's Garceau's desk. Excuse me?
Well, doesn't the school committee hire the superintendent?
Yeah, well, ultimately it's the school committee and the superintendent, certainly. They are ultimately responsible for everything that goes on in those classrooms. That's correct.
So what kind of reception have you received around town, and have anyone tried to cancel you?
Well, I got a few comments when I first addressed the school committee back in October, but it was pretty much nothing, not very much. But since my letter went into the paper the other day, I had overwhelmingly.
What other day? What day was it?
Sunday.
Just this past Sunday.
Yes. Overwhelmingly positive responses to my letter.
But yet no one will join you in putting their name on anything.
Well, not yet, but we're
Westerly to me wasn't, we didn't say this when you came on, but Westerly is my father's hometown. Some of my cousins who live down there, some other Stenhouses in the area.
And your dad.
And my dad, that's right. You knew my dad up at Brown when he was the baseball coach there. You
Yep.
were a football player there.
Yep.
And Westerly wasn't timid people as far as I know, but
Right.
It sounds like, again, I'm going to use a provocative term. It sounds like there's a bunch of sheeple in Westerly. What specifically do you want parents and other concerned citizens in Westerly to do?
We have to engage, simply because somebody speaks out about the tenets of the 1619 Project or BLM or critical race theory or teachers pushing their agendas on kids does not make someone a racist. People are afraid to be branded a racist. You're not a racist just because you disagree with somebody who happens to be on the other side. We always used to be able to converse and come to conclusions and common ground. We're not doing that anymore.
Is there a Westerly taxpayers group or concerned citizens group or anything like that?
There are several groups on Facebook that I'm aware of.
Aligned with you?
Well, a couple of them I align with. One of them specifically does not, and that's where the other day I was called, a white middle-aged man, which I am, I guess. But they
you were called worse than that.
Well, yeah, they didn't call me ugly or anything, so that's probably coming. But they did say I really didn't have any business talking about pronouns, or they didn't read my letter. They saw some buzzwords and they took off on them. And I want to engage. I want us all to engage.
I have some advice for you. Then we're gonna let you go. Listen, you need, tomorrow on our show, we've got a Portsmouth concerned citizen group that won a major victory. Last week on our show, we had a Bristol County concerned citizen group that won a major victory. We had a Barrington concerned citizens group that fought a good battle, ended up losing, but still they were in the fight in an organized way. For you, I see you brought along a bunch of viewers with you. We've got good viewership going on here. You guys ought to get together and get organized. That's one man can't change it. One man can start change. So I really encourage you. We can put you in touch if you'd like. Talk to me or Larry, the Liberty guy, and we can put you in touch with people who run these other groups. But you've got to get organized, because you're right. We've got to protect our kids from this false narrative. So Bob Corradio, thank you for joining me on In the Dugout, and we wish you good luck, and we hope to have you back so you can give us an update on what's going on there.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Mike. I appreciate it very much.
Bob Corradio, concerned citizen and parent in Westerly, Rhode Island. Thank you, Bob. All right, so folks, just another example of just Neverland creeping into our culture. In this case, into our schools. In Barrington, Rhode Island's case, creeping on the flagpole. In Bristol, Rhode Island's case, trying to creep into the town council with a unnecessary and frivolous diversity, equity, and inclusion council. It's coming to a town near you. It's probably in a town near you, and you don't know about it. You do need to know about it, especially when your children's education and future and sense of reality is at stake. We cannot. It's just amazing to me that we can keep living in this never land of make-believe. But yet we do. And for some reason it prevails. It becomes the prevailing narrative. It becomes the prevailing political agenda. It becomes the prevailing media story. It becomes the prevailing culture. And it's all fake. And people, as you heard Bob say, people are afraid to say anything. That's not America. It's very disturbing. You have to stand up. Thank you, Bob, for standing up. I'm sure he's been ridiculed around town. But can you believe on a cause? I mean, this is on a cause this just, right? On a cause is just, the just cause is to stop the teaching that every white person is a racist. What could be almost more fundamentally just than that, but yet people will not speak out? What have we become? If you're willing to speak out and you know of an issue in your town, likewise, if any of this political correct wokeness, which really means I have blinders on, I only see what my tribal leaders tell me to see, and I don't see anything else, and I won't consider anything else, and I'll cancel anybody else who I can't see within my narrow blinders. We can't let that culture continue to dominate our society. Just can't happen. Someday we are going to really wake up. We're going to wake up to the fact that wokeness is a myth. That our kids are being brainwashed. Openly. Right in front of our eyes. Proudly. Boastfully. And yet our team is afraid to take the field. If you're in Westerly, get with Bob. I'm sure you can find him. Start a group and push back. And if you need to push back, contact our friends over at the Gaspy Project, and they'll show you how to play some political hardball, because this is serious what they're trying to do to your kids, to our kids. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about a local victory in Portsmouth. Local activism works. The left knows it. And in some cities and towns in Rhode Island, the conservatives, the center right, are realizing it and are starting to be effective at it and are starting to win. We're going to tell you about one of those stories tomorrow and in the Dugout. So again, thanks to Bob Corradio. And we'll see you tomorrow for In the Dugout. Mike Stenhouse, we will see you next